That being said, I am looking forward to a few clouds this week. I don't know about you, but it's been hot at my house. Heard y'all talking about maybe some air conditioner problems. We didn't have too bad of ones. My mother-in-law came up, I guess the Wednesday after Brooks was born, and stayed for 9 days. Her and my wife's dad are divorced, and she remarried about 7 years ago, a Peruvian man. They live in a condo down there a little bit east of Tampa. They've just moved in. His brother, I guess it's a townhouse, maybe 3 bedrooms maybe. They've just moved in his brother, his sister-in-law, and their 2 kids. And their house stays on 78 degrees. And she came to my house, which my house would stay at about 64 if I was living by myself. But it was at about 70, and she came in and acted like I was murdering her, trying to freeze her to death. And I would come home in the middle of the day and see it up to about 72, and I'd say, oh, no, it's going back down to 70. But once it got a little warmer, that air conditioner started not acting up, but just couldn't keep up, and I think she thought she won the war there. God won it for her, I guess. So looking forward to a little bit cooler a week this week. 1 Samuel chapter number 17, verse number 15 is where we'll start. Before I stopped teaching there in the Sunday school class, the teen Sunday school class, this is where we were at. And so I went ahead and started finishing a few of these lessons. And so I'm looking forward over the next few weeks and months teaching some of these in children's church and things like that. So we'll be in 1 Samuel chapter number 17 and verse number 15. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their thousands, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines, and David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according the same words. So he's coming out every day, obviously, you know the story, I don't have to go into it. Coming out, challenging the men of Israel here, and for the first time David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. Now, we've preached before, I think probably maybe the last time or the time before last that I was here, it's no wonder that they were scared. I mean, this is a scary figure. It's something they'd never seen before. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. The men of Israel said, have you seen this man that is come up surely to defy Israel is he come up? And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass upon his head, and also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go. For he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. This whole time, God is preparing him step by step for a greater enemy and a greater enemy and a greater enemy. And that's what we'll talk about just for a few minutes tonight. And I mean few minutes. I've been getting a little long-winded, and I'm sorry. I've noticed that. I go back and look, or my wife will go back and look at your all's Facebook and go, 45 minutes? Wow. I'm like, no, that's not. Nobody needs to listen to me that long. But we'll be in this passage, and I really do think the Lord will have something here for us tonight. Father, we ask you bless the reading of your word tonight. Help us as we preach here the next few moments. Lord, to just gain some knowledge and some insight from this story here of David and how you used him. And Lord, and how you often do the same things in our lives, Lord, as we strive to fight and we strive to serve. And Lord, we strive to do your will. And we ask you to help us in your name. Amen. Our Christian life can really and truly be a series of stepping stones. I mean, you think of it, and that's what it is. God prepares you in one moment for the next one. I think of just how our lives have been affected here in the last couple weeks. I looked at my wife, maybe last week sometime we were alone together, and I just looked over and I said, you know, with this being the third child, it just seems so much sweeter. Now, this is the last one we have planned. The Lord had a different plan the last time we said that. Actually, the time before that, with Reese coming a little early. But that's fine. And so, you want to savor it all, but with Noah came into the world with a bang. He is a little sick and had some stuff wrong with him. And you know, with your first child and first time you've ever had a baby, you go home that day and you're like, you know, it's kind of irresponsible of this hospital to let us go home with this child. Like, they showed us a video, but I don't plan on shaking the baby. If you've seen that video, I don't think that's a fear of mine, but you know, it's mine to keep alive now. They probably should have, told us a little something about how to do that. I felt so underprepared. And Noah, of course, the outfit that little Brooksy was wearing today was Noah's first outfit that he wore to church. And so that's, we had to take pictures at the Mexican. I can't stand pictures, but we had to. And all that stuff. But I can remember the first day getting Noah ready for church. I thought I was killing him. And I've got his little arms, and in those days, you take their little arms and you try to shove them in that little armhole. I'm like, it can't be this difficult. Surely I'm not going to break his body. Like, he should be okay. But I'm taking this delicate care. You're changing the diapers, and I'm just taking the most delicate little care. And every cry I thought was the end of the world. And every time he fussed, I thought there must be something wrong. And that's just the way that you think. Well, then Reese came. We had wanted to wait 3 years. God gave us, We'd wanted to wait 3 years to even start trying for a third or for a second. But God gave us a baby in 2 years. That's how He did it. And we're thankful for it now. They're 23 months apart. So whenever Noah is 23 months, still potty training, still doing all that stuff, here comes little Reese. And she was a whirlwind. Cried, hated me, despised me for the first 6 months of her life. And that was weird because we have one, I still have Noah that's running around, and we've not even started really potty training him. He's not even 2 yet. So all those diapers are changing. We've got Reese and we've got 2 toddlers, and we're like, how are we gonna do this? It's insane. And then Brooksy comes. Reese's 4 and Noah's 6. And I just look at Colleen and go, this is so easy. Like, this has been so wonderful. Everything's good. I'm getting him ready this morning. I know that I can shove that little arm in there a little bit and not cause any problems. I know that, I don't have to basically, get tongs to put his pants on because I don't want to hurt him. I know that their little bodies are a little more strong than I felt like they were at the start. And each step has prepared us for something more. And now I told Colleen, I said, Brooks will get the best of us in every way. Because all of our failures from the start, we don't have those anymore. All those problems and scared moments and those things, I can soothe a baby now with no problem. I know how to use a car seat. I know how to use a stroller. I know how to feed a baby and warm up a bottle. All those things were new at one time. And now Brooks is going to reap the benefits of being that last child, all because I'm prepared for it. I can remember back in about probably 5 or 6 years ago, we had a girl in school, and I think I've probably told you something about her. She used to do quilts. She used to hand make quilts for our competition. 200, 300 hours. Every square she hand sewed. Every border she hand sewed. They were incredible. I can remember her. She even did it at one point to her own physical demise. She started having problems with fingers and all kinds of stuff just because of how much she had to sew. And I can remember her one time sitting behind me. We're on our way to state convention. We were going down to Cookeville, Tennessee. We're on the bus, and she's sitting behind me. I have my arm back, and I feel tears hitting my arm. And she's got her head right next to my arm, and tears are just falling from her face. So I look back, I say, honey, I know that this is hard on you right now. You've got to just do it. You're so close. You've got a few stitches left. You'll be done by the time we get down there. You've got to stay strong. And so she's like, I just don't see that life will ever get harder than this. I said, Hannah Jo, I know that it seems like that right now. But I will assure you, life will get harder than this. And she goes, no, it won't. She started fighting me about it. She said, there's no way life will get harder than this moment. I said, well, that's fine. I said, but now in a couple of years when it does get hard, you better be the one that comes to Brother David and find him and say, I'm sorry, you were right. She got into college, had trouble. It's not her fault. She's a bright girl. The program that she got into did not prepare her well for the NCLEX there that they have to take to get their nursing license. And she started failing it. Man, it was awful. It was heart-wrenching to watch her go through that. And so about after the second one, she came up to me and she goes, almost with tears in her eyes. She was like, you are so right. I can remember. Do you remember when we sat on the bus to Cookeville and I was doing my quilt and you said, and it popped back into my mind, she was like, you're right. This is harder. I said, Hannah Jo, I'm just going to be honest with you. You're going to look at this in a couple years and go, man, that was the good times. I said, because that is your Christian life. That is life in general. You are prepared step by step by step for what is necessary and what is needed for the next battle. One battle leads to another. But with each battle, that comes, I'm starting to realize that God's already prepared me for it. And I hope that you can sit here today and echo that same thing. That in the situations that come in your life, though hardships come and though the next bad thing happens, I hope that you can truly say that God prepares you each step of the way. And when that thing happens, something that should break you and tear you apart, the Lord gives grace in that area. The Lord brings back something you've already faced. The Lord proves strong just simply in the fact that He's worked on your behalf before. And David's going to teach Saul this lesson. And he's going to teach these men a lesson through his own testimony. David comes to the battle and is confronted by Goliath. It's the first time he's seen it. I know that there's probably words sent throughout Israel. Hey, there's a giant in the land that is set to destroy Israel. David's father sends him forth to the battlefield with some food for his brothers. And as David rises up and gets there and he hears this man for the first time, and it would be weird as a child, not as a child, but as probably a teenager, young adult, to come into a battlefield, know that Goliath comes in, and all you know of Goliath from the time that you've been there is everything seems normal. Goliath comes there to that valley, everybody flees. It would have to be a little, in my opinion, that'd be scary. If all of a sudden I see men of war running towards me scared, zombies have arrived or something. I don't know what's coming. I can assure you I'm not going to be going the opposite direction. If the military comes in here and says, hey, we need to evacuate, I'm not going to go, no, let's go fight. I'm not that type of person. I will die. I know that. I'm well aware of that. But David here, it flips a switch in him, because here in verse number 23, Goliath by name came out of the armies of the Philistines and spake. David heard them, and as David is hearing these words from Goliath, all the men of Israel, they see him, they flee. Now, we know this battle has been taking place over weeks and weeks and weeks, 40 days. And this is probably a common occurrence. Fight, 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 Goliath comes, run. Fight, 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 Goliath comes, run. And as I've said before, this is an enemy that has never been seen before. It's an enemy that is far too great. David begins to rally the troops, and he comes behind him, and he spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? The people answered him after this manner, what we read before about the daughter of Saul there, and the house being free from Israel, which that'd be a pretty nice little thing if the U.S. would just say, hey, you fight in the military, you don't have to pay taxes the rest of your life. I think that's a pretty good trade there. But as we go into verse number 27, they tell him what should be done. Eliab begins to question him. You're just here because you want to see what's happening. You want to see what's going on. I know the naughtiness of your heart. I know your pride. I know that you're not here for right reasons. To which David has one of the most wonderful responses that we talk about all the time and we say all the time. He tells them, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? Is there not something to fight for? And one of the things that I love the most about this scripture is verse number 30. He turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. So David just simply, as a young man who has just watched an army flee from the sight of Goliath, come running back towards him. Now his own brother is saying, you're just here to see us, you're just here to see us fail. And I don't know exactly what's in Eliab's heart and mind. Maybe he just thinks David's there to see a show. see somebody get killed. I don't know what the situation is. But David said, no, there's something here to be done. There is a cause here, and he goes one by one throughout all the men and begins to say, is there not a cause? Next guy. Is there not a cause worth fighting for? And all of them answered him again after the former manner. Basically just saying, we're scared. We're not fighting this guy. We're not going to do anything about this giant. So David, of course, goes and as we see, Saul kind of distrusts what David can do. The words were heard which David spake, and they rehearsed, but then before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. What a fun... Now I don't know what this is like with teenagers right now, because the teenagers in our... I don't know if you've been to Saline lately. They're giants. I'm telling you, we've got boys. Other than one, there's one that's like 5'8", and he's not huge, but the rest of them, they're all skinny. They're all 6'2", 6'3". I don't know what they've been fed, but they're all taller than I am. And to have a young person just come into and now David and Saul did have a relationship there. David has played the harp for Saul at times. So there was some sort of relationship there. Of course, that relationship is not as close as it will be in the future, as Jonathan and David would become friends, and Saul would, at that time, really and truly, be like a father to David for a while. But he has enough gumption in him to come into Saul and say, hey, Saul, don't worry about it. I'll take care of this Philistine. What a comical type situation this would be for a man of war who is head and shoulders above everybody, as Saul would have been, who did have fighting and military strength, as Saul would have had, who would have been one of the roughest and toughest guys that there would have been. You study the history of 1 Samuel as they go back in the wars. Saul was not a weak man. Saul was a very strong man. And here comes this ruddy little kid in there and says, hey, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep. And in this, though Saul believes that the battle is too much for David, David is about to show Saul that God has prepared him for something bigger than he is. God has prepared him for something that Saul might not have even came to in his life. We don't know if Saul had killed a lion and a bear. But David goes on to say that there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. All of Israel is scared. All of Israel is running. All of Israel flees. But a young man comes up and says, hey, this is not outside of the realm of what God has already prepared me for. This is not outside of the realm of what I've already seen God do in my own life. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be exactly the same, because the same God that delivered the lion and the bear to me is going to deliver this uncircumcised Philistine. Saul arms David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also, he armed him with a coat of mail. David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him, and he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. What a picture this would be, to have a young man say, hey, God has prepared me for this very moment. I took a sling and I took a staff, and I slew a bear and I slew a lion, and God's going to do the same here. Stepping stone, lion, bear, giant. God's going to do it. He had faith from the past that God would protect in the future. He had that faith already. And Saul begins to push that armor on him and say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. David said, no. God has prepared me for what I need. All I need is I'm going to take my staff, I'm going to go get some rocks out of the creek bed, and I'm going to go to war with my sling. Seems uncommon, but there's something behind, as these men would have looked at David and saw him heading out to that valley with 5 stones and a little purse-like thing on his hip, and a sling in his hand and a staff, going out to face this Goliath. They would have looked at it and it would have looked very odd. But they did not understand what God had already done and delivered from in David's life. They did not understand how God had already worked and led and helped and delivered. In our lives, there are a lot of things that are put upon us. There are a lot of harsh things. There are a lot of hard things. And in time, and in present time, when it's happening, you don't understand. You can't comprehend. It does not make sense. I'm sure as David is sitting there with a bunch of sheep, seeing a lion run out and grab one in his mouth, David's not going, well, back to the fields again to kill that lion. It's just another day out in the fields. No. This was special. This was something that did not happen all the time. And then whenever it happened again and the bear comes out and grabs a lamb and goes and runs away with it, I'm sure he's not going, the old norm, just the everyday life of a shepherd, I'm going to go kill a bear real quick. That's not something, that's preposterous to us today. That would have been preposterous here. No, these were special situations that God sent his way that allowed David to prove him in those times that if he would put his trust and his faith in him, and that if he would allow God to work through that little sling, that every future situation to come, God would take care of. I've told you this before, and I say it not for pity, but it's just to be transparent. This has been the worst year and a half, 2 years of our lives. I don't go into all the stories. I wouldn't want to. But if I went into some of the stories, you would be like, man, it's been on you all this last couple of years, and it has. And it's rough, and it's hard. And one thing happens, and then another thing happens. One of the things, my wife had a melanoma on her leg. She still got the scar from it, everything. And you say, man, that time in life was so hard. It was so scary. It was so my life and I'm just telling you, it was physically manifesting itself on me. Just so much stress and pressure and just scared for my wife. And it's not that I did not have trust in God, because again, I say when you follow God, it's not just like you're running out willy-nilly and just saying, hey, I'll tackle anything. No. Because in our weakness is his strength. And he knows how we are. He knows the frame that we are in. And I had those times where I would just say, Lord, I don't know what you're doing, but just do it. Because I can't think about it anymore. I can't fret about it. I can't stress about it anymore. And if I were to tell you that, and you might think, well, when it comes to that kind of stuff, that's a very important thing, a big thing. When I consider the scope of that few weeks that we dealt there with Colleen having that to what we've went through just in the last 3 or 4 months, I'm just telling you, it's a completely different animal, but the stress and the just strain on us is probably more. And what did God do back then? Well, He just simply calmed me. He just simply allowed me to prove Him. He just simply allowed me to get through a struggle and get to the other side and say, Lord, it's not exactly how I want you to do it. And if you don't do that for a while, it'll be completely fine. If you don't send something our way, it's all good. But it also put within me something that could just say, well, when the next thing happens, we're just placing it on Him. When the lion comes, get the sling, go let God deliver. When the bear comes, get the sling, go let God deliver. When Goliath is defying the armies of Israel and the God of Israel, get the sling, go let God do what He's going to do. And that's each and every one of our lives as we go through things and we think this is too much for me to bear. It's too hard for me to get through. I'm not going to see the other end of it. Trust God in that moment to work things together for His good. And if it's for His good and it's for your glory, it's going to be for your good. Because if it's for His good and His glory, it's going to be for your good. And allow God to prove Himself to you in those moments. And then watch what He does in the next moment. And then watch what He does in the next moment. I always used to sit and I can't believe Him now. I can't fathom Him now. But hear Poppy, and Adam's heard Poppy tell some of these stories. He might have even told some here. About times where he would sit down at the table with a couple potatoes and have him, his wife, and his 3 daughters sitting at the table together and saying, well, let's just pray and we'll eat what we've got, and then payday's not for this many days. We'll just have what we have. And get done praying and hear a knock at the door and walk outside and a porch be filled, even while the prayer is taking place. A porch be filled with groceries. Or him go on a trip to a preacher's meeting that he just felt like God wanted him to go to. And he left with $5 in his pocket. And he knew he had just enough gas to get there and maybe enough gas to get home. And if he could just use that $5, then that's fine. And he goes to a meeting. And a missionary gets up and the Lord tells him, I want you to give that $5. And Poppy sat there in tears knowing that he can't make it back. And he knew that if he didn't have that $5 to put gas in his truck, he wasn't getting back to Somerset. And he gives that $5, and as he's walking out the door, a man comes up and hands him a $20 bill. And you think, those are steps of faith, and my life is different, and the things that I've experienced are different. But I'm going to tell you, for an 80-year-old man that has went through a lot in the last couple of years, you see faith. You see a God that's proved. You don't see fret as much anymore on Him. Now there's stress, yes, it's taking a toll on Him. But I'm just telling you, it hasn't shaken his faith. You say, well, how does that happen? Step by step by step. Continually trusting what God has for you and what God brings into your life, and trusting Him for the next thing. And trusting Him for the next thing. And I've not arrived at it yet. Honestly, I'm very far from it. But I'm praying that one day I'll get to that point where I'm just like, I don't have to worry about anything. The Philippians says, be careful for nothing. That is not me, okay? I'm not to that point. But I can see myself working to that point. And I hope you can see yourself too if you're not already there. Total dependence upon what God has already done in your life. And total trust that what He has done for you in the past, He will continue to do for you in the future. Lion, bear, giant. It was all the same in David's eyes. It was just an enemy. God's going to work the rest of it out. Give me my staff. Give me my sling. Let me get a few rocks. And let's go take out an enemy that nobody had ever seen before. It's the same in our lives. Allow God to prove Himself to you in the test of your faith. And watch how He continues to work and build your faith for the future. Father, we thank You for this night, allowing us to preach here for just a few moments. We ask You that in these